Hello everyone, it's time for this week's live stream. I feel like that camera has to be adjusted slightly. Let's push this down. Yeah, it's a little bit better. All right. This week's topic, it was actually one that was requested. So I thought, yeah, I like that one. We haven't talked about this in a long time. And we will be getting into how to form your own reef club in case you don't have one in your area. The one thing I'm going to keep an eye on, of course, is going to be my microphone because sometimes it lets me down. Hi, Elmer. How are you? I don't really have any reef news. I took some pictures of the reef. I guess I can show those to you right quick. Let me pull those up. Just a few last night from above. This box is so big. I found a setting in the software to like hide the heads-up display of this software, and I didn't turn it off because what if I need it? So now, of course, it's in my way again. Here we go. 2022, February 18. Okay, so the Drew's Acro had gotten hit with a bunch of acropore-eating flatworms, and it's actually looking pretty decent from above. From the front, it's still kind of blah, but there is some color, as you can see. I mean, there's some green in there, which is toward the end of the part that's the foundation of the rockwork, as well as a puddle that was left behind when I broke it off in the first place. And so there's that color there. Then the branch itself is red. There's some polyps extending, promising. There was another whole half of this piece that fell down onto the sand, and when I removed it from the sand bed and blew it off in front of a Vortec pump and put it on top of the rockwork, the next day part of it was dead, and I thought, well, maybe because the sand was on top. And, of course, you don't want to bury your SPS corals. And then yesterday, it was completely gone. I thought, oh, really? I mean, why? Because the other half was not submerged. So anyway, that one's what I've got left. We're at the end of the stick, so to speak. All right, the next one I want to show you. No, I didn't want to do that. Sorry. Put it on my screen, not your screen. Let's do this a different way. Right here. So this one right here, my friend recommended that I call it Oscar the Hairy Grouch. This is a green Miliopora that I got from Terra Reef, one of two. And I'm going to actually make this one bigger so you can see. If you look to its right, you will see a piece of Walt Disney that is very colorful and looks great. And then beneath the Walt Disney, you can see some of the Drew's Acro. To the right, you can see a type of a green Acropora granulosa, and behind you can see a red dragon. So there's some, okay, so that's that one. And then this one here is looking less stellar to me, which of course concerns me. This one right here is the Home Wrecker. It was more colorful, more vivid a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and nothing in the tank explains why it wouldn't look good. So of course, once a week I'm hitting with a turkey baster thinking those flatworms are sucking it dry, but nothing came off of it. So next Monday, Tuesday, I'm sending off an ICP sample. I'm just gonna see if there's anything there. I discussed this last night with my friend Dwayne, and he said, you have some good color. I kind of feel like the corals are hungry. I'm like, I have phosphate, I have nitrate, I feed the tank. So I may start drowning the tank in Benner Reef, maybe daily, just to see what kind of chaos that causes with my tank. Also, this one here is the KP Staghorn that came from Dwayne. And this is the one coral in my tank that looks fake when I stare at it. I mean, I just see it, and I swear I wouldn't be surprised if anyone that was visiting said, hey, did you go buy that one and stick it in your tank just so you'd have one living coral? Did you put a fake coral in there just to make yourself feel better? It's so weird looking to me in person. And, it's pretty, but it's just weird. It's hard to explain. It's too HD compared to the rest of the tank. But it's been like that, and it's growing, and I should not be complaining at all. But it really does look like a fake coral to me. And then this one here has been doing some weird stuff. This is the Peach Millie, and I can't make it any bigger for you than that, but all the tips that are like 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch long do not have the green coloration. It's like the green didn't keep traveling up the stalks, and I don't really understand why. It's odd to me. And I've been staring at it, and this is not something new. It's been going on for some time, and I can't figure it out. The Shadowcaster also is doing it. Again, my discussion with Dwayne last night, we talked for about an hour and a half, so I'm going to keep regurgitating what he said. He had said maybe the corals are growing so quickly that the polyps are not catching up, but I just don't think that's the case. The coral itself, I mean, it's got the polyps extended. It's fuzzy, but the tips just look off to me, and I don't know why. And again, tried turkey baster and nothing came flying off of it, so I can't explain it. Behind it is a forest fire digitata, which the bottom half looks really pretty. The top half didn't look so great in that photo for whatever reason. And this one here has been a very strange coral since I got it from Ryan. It is the Sin City Acropora. It's in the tenuous family, which according to, and I didn't really think of it this way, but Dwayne says, tenuous are crazy picky. And this coral from above, correctly edited in Lightroom as best I could, looks great. But to the naked eye, it looks really strange. Matter of fact, I got to turn around the other way. That one right there is the one I'm showing you now. And from the front, it just doesn't look colorful at all. It looks pale. And yet, from above, under the right lighting, it looks nice. It's just, I thought maybe it's just, I keep throwing these aquaphor flatworms in there. Maybe it's just covered in them and they're just sucking out the color. Nothing came off that coral. So I can't really explain it, but it's been like that. And when Ryan came to visit at one point, he said to me, why does that one look like that? And I'm like, I don't know. He goes, well, I mean, it's alive. The polyps are. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's got skin, but it's so pale. And I'm halfway tempted to just lower it in the tank, even though it's a high light demanding, high flow demanding coral. But maybe I'd like the look of it better if it was lower. Or maybe I should just quit complaining and just see what it does. But anyway, it's got potential, but I know that's not what it looks like in Ryan's tank, and I don't know what the deal is. And then this one here is a Disney that isn't looking so great to me. Well, I'll leave it big for a second here. So it's lacking all the extra colors you would expect. And the front edge, which would be the bottom side of this image right here, the bottom of that lower branch, looks really weird to me. And I did take a picture from the side because I'm trying to study it and see what the heck's going on with it. But this coral was much prettier before. I don't know why it's got less color. Now, it was literally next to the Drew's acro. And when I blew that coral off and all those flatworms flew off, I mean, this would literally be like the next thing they'd hit. So I expected them to be on there, and I've been turkey basting it once a week. And according to Dwayne, and I mean, sometimes I don't know, but according to Dwayne, he says you can blow the color right off a coral. I don't know that I have that ability, but it is looking kind of iffy to me. I don't really understand it. I'm glad I have another little branch of it in a different spot that looks great, but I mean, it's not dead by any means. It's got some decent coloration. It just doesn't look right to me. So we'll see what ICP does. We'll see what increased feeding does. Now, speaking of feeding, if you feed enough in your tank, you will cause all kinds of issues. And I have already found down low on this rockwork over here toward the, in areas that are sheltered, there is cyanogrowth happening. And then there's a spot next to the seabed anemone where there's a green hair algae patch. So I'm like, okay, there must be nutrients in this tank if I can grow those things. And like I said, my nitrate is measuring around 15. Phosphates are usually around 0.1 or so. So I will do a water change and see if that makes any difference too. I mean, we'll find out. But other than that, alkalinity is staying stable at 9.5. Calcium's a little bit low. It's around 370, and I'd like that to be more like 400, 425. Magnesium was 1350 at the last test, and it's time to mix up a new batch. And potassium was 435, so not a lack of potassium. Salinity is 35 ppt or 1.0265. Specific gravity. Temperature is 77 to 78 every single day. I have not seen anything in the sump that's a pollutant. I haven't seen anything that would make me say, oh, there's the problem. So it's time to figure out what's going on. So that's an update on the tank for you. The anemone cube hasn't been begun yet. I had the energy to focus on building the new stand yet. And I have a trip planned to see my parents here in about 2 weeks. And so with me driving out of town, I don't really want to set up a brand new tank. I've got them hooked up to the main reef. They're stable, they're solid. I can film them, I can feed them, I can look at them. So that can be a March project. So that's that. Let's see. See if I'm going to check some of your comments before I jump into today's story, today's topic. Thank you, Rick. Yeah, it was a hard week, but I don't know. It's been a hard year, and the 1 year anniversary did not make it easier at all. So I'm doing all right. There you go. See, it was your idea. Yeah, Nick asked me on Miller's Reef if I could please discuss this topic. So I said, yes, I would totally do that. Roshan, I don't really have an opinion on this one. It is something new that has come up in the last 6 months or so, 5 months or so. There's a big thread about it on Reef to Reef. My tank, assuming my probe is correct, is measuring 8.1 to 8.3 every single day. But yeah, there is some discussion that if your pH is solid, then no matter what happens to your alkalinity, your reef tank won't skip a beat. And it's kind of an interesting theory or fact. I don't know yet. I haven't dug into it myself. But there's a lot of people that do different things, adding different things to their tank to create a better pH level. And I mean, we've always known that 8.3 is the desired goal. So if you're dealing with a tank that averages 7.7 to 7.9, it may not do as well as a tank that tends to hit 8.3 every single day. Serge says, I've been trying to set up my lighting schedule for the longest time. When you say the longest time, before I keep reading, how long? A month, 6 months, 2 years? That helps a lot. He says that I'm running it from 8 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. and I only run AB Plus from 12 to 5. I run very blue, very little with the AB Plus. The AB Plus is a very popular schedule that I believe it was either Ecotech or Worldwide Corals cooked that one up and said, this is a fantastic schedule. And so everyone immediately adapted it, thinking, well, if I can get corals that are growing under it, I should do that over my tank as well. The schedule itself, every bit of lighting is an important topic. You got to think about the duration of your lighting being on, as well as the intensity of your lighting being on. And the longer they are on, the less intense your lights should probably be, so you don't just cook your reef. If you have, just use real numbers. Let's say you run your lights 12 hours a day and they literally turn on and turn off. They're 100% or they're 0. If you did that, you would have a very bleached out tank. It's just too much light for too long, and very few corals could adapt to that and absorb what they need and tolerate the sunburn they're getting when they're done absorbing. So we want to find that sweet spot. I, for the longest time, running my metal halides, would only have a metal halide bulb on each day for 7 hours. And I would only have all 3 on at the same time for, I think it was 3 hours, because my lighting was staggered across the reef. I didn't make everything come on at once. I turned on one, and then I turned on the second one, an hour and a half later, and then I turned the third one on an hour and a half after that. Now everything's on, and then this one turned off, and then this one turned off, and then this one turned off. And that staggered lighting let me feel like the sun was moving across my reef to the other side. Since I switched to the sky, I have not done that, which I don't know. I mean, I like the staggered schedule. And to be honest, I could probably program these independently to be the staggered lighting schedule that I did for, over a decade. I was very used to it. But it is kind of nice to just have the whole tank lit up at the same time with the same spectrum. So I do appreciate that. But I don't run them. Matter of fact, I run my lights a maximum of 60% of what they can do. And that is their peak of the day is 60. but it starts off 0%. And then, an hour and a half in, it's only at like 13%. And then finally it goes to maybe 43% and then 60, and it stays 60 for a couple of hours, and then it tapers back down again. So I am encouraging you not to have like a ramp up of 30 minutes and then 11 hours of strong intensity and then 30-minute ramp down. I'd much rather have you see a much more gradual ramp, or even just come up a little bit and then come up a little bit more, for a couple of hours, and then, you hit it for a couple of hours with some intensity, adding some white in there, not just the blue. Oh my God, there's this huge thread that I stumbled on, and somebody just asked, hey, does white grow corals? And immediately people said, no, it doesn't. And I was like, oh my God, of course it does. And then, people were throwing out nanometers and stuff, and I just don't want to argue. I really don't. And I would love to be able to point to some article and say, here, guys, just read this, because my knowledge came from experience, from actually living through those days of white light versus blue light. And I may not say it right, or I may not have the perfect argument. I'm not big on debating. I've never liked it. I dislike it, actually. And for me, having some white light in your daytime has always been a good way to grow corals. And then having blue light gives you the vivid colors that you like so much. So I encourage running daylight while you're not looking at the tank. Just have some white light in there for a couple of hours and let your corals get a boost and let them absorb some. And, people are going to, I am telling you, the arguments out there, they're not misinformation, but man, do they just grab onto a sentence and then stick with it like, this is proof. And they'll say things along the lines of the corals of Intelli cannot absorb this certain wavelength, so it's absolutely pointless to use it. It's not pointless. It's actually making the entire planet live. So, there is some benefit to all the spectrums. There are certain ones that do better. And, the growers that are growing plants inside greenhouses or growing marijuana now in farms, they have all chosen to lean into the pink spectrum, right? And they just feel like it's a waste of energy to do any other color. Okay, whatever. I don't even know. That's not my thing. My thing is reef tanks. And I've been watching corals grow, and I know I've seen tanks where the tank was completely blue all the time, and the corals grew super slowly. So I grow my corals into large colonies, and I have some white light, and then into the evening I have the nice blue. And so that's why I've been recommending for a long time, because it works. But, I don't want to argue. I really don't. Maybe one day I'll stumble across a new, fresh article that will say it way better than I can, and I can just share that with the world, and we can all read it and decide if we agree with it or not. Okay. I don't want to stay on a lot of Q&As right now. I apologize that you have to wait till later, but I want to talk about the topic, which is how to start up a reef club in your local area. So if you are in a spot where there's no club, you've looked it up, there's nothing on Google, there's nothing on Facebook, there's nothing on LinkedIn, you've looked around and there's nothing, then it may come on you, if you so desire, to start a club yourself. But in Nick's case, I believe he said, if I remember correctly, that the club kind of went away and he got permission to restart it. And he wanted to know the best approach and what to look out for and what to work on. And I thought, yeah, that's a good topic. So I've got a list of notes here. And we're going to start off with the most basic of information, and then we'll kind of get into some nitty-gritty here. Trying to shrink this to where it'll all fit on my screen nicely. And I really don't need these overlays because I'm not using any today. So put that right there. First thing you want to do if you're starting a club up is get the word out. And the way to get the word out is to put it where people are going to see it. So, of course, social media is going to be a huge part of it. And you're going to make some kind of graphic that will catch someone's eye, and that you can do in Photoshop, or maybe your spouse can work with Photoshop, or you've got a friend that can do it for you. But create a graphic. You're going to need some kind of a name for your club in your area. You have to start with something, or you can just say, "Help me form a club" in giant font, right? And then or you should say something like, "What kind of club?" Or you might be starting a gun club in your area. You want to find out, who's interested in your area that would like to be part of this club. And you could either make it a thing. One of the first functions of these new group of people is let's name it, or you can come up with a name first on your own just to kind of move things along. And it helps if there's a name, because that way you can say join XYZ club and you can say we're a new club, we're new to the area, you can promote. Now, how do you promote it? One of the simplest things you can do, and I see it all the time on my Facebook options, is create a new page. And I see it sitting there at the top always. I'm like, man, do that many people create new pages all the time? Because I once in a blue moon create a page on Facebook. I mean, the last one I made was Milo's Reef. So I don't remember ever needing to make another page since then. But if you can have a page, you can start to organize your thoughts there. But I do want to urge not to rely on Facebook to be your sole way of reaching out to people, because Facebook is always changing the rules, and they're always, they literally have the ability to pull the plug at any time. So if you want to create a page and you want to start getting people, talking to each other, you can create a Facebook page and you can create a Facebook group about this new club. But I would strongly urge you to create a website. And those can be cheap, they can be simple, they can be bare bones, just the basic information, or you can expand it into something more. And I would suggest that when you create your website that you also create a forum on it. And I know forums are they are archaic, old school, but they still exist in almost every trade and in many, many hobbies. And the reason being is you're going to have people in your club that are going to sell things. Now, my club, DFW Mass, actually is 30 years old. It was started in 1992. And that club at one point had, at first it just started as an ad in the newspaper. That's how you got word the club was out. People had to look through a newspaper into a section, the wanted area, the ads area, and you would stumble on, oh, look, there's a club about saltwater aquariums. How do I sign up for that? So, I mean, there is that kind of thing that can happen. But you would also want to be able to put specific things on there, like the purpose of the club. Why are you even making a club in the first place? Because if you are just trying to find people in your local area to hang out with, that's a great time for a club. If you're wanting a group of people to come together to buy things online in large amounts to disperse amongst yourselves and to share the shipping, that's another great reason to have a club. If you're wanting to have an area to buy and sell things locally pertaining to the hobby, then having that forum on your website would be best, because the rules on Facebook are so strict about selling animals and livestock that everyone's trying to skirt by, and the group always risks getting shut down. So if you've created this great group on Facebook and you rely on it as your sole source of communication, and then a few people post up ads of anemones for sale, clownfish for sale, entire reef tanks for sale, and Facebook shuts those down one after another, they may just shut down your group. And then you have to appeal and beg them to open it. And what's their motivation to listen to you? What do they care? So they've got 1 billion users or more. So for them to shut down one little page and one little group of 50 people, they don't care. So it'd be much better if you have your own area somewhere else. Plus, if anything ever does happen with your Facebook page, your Facebook group, and they're gone, your audience, your group, your club will know they can at least go to the official website to get information. Another thing that you would want to create within your group on Facebook, as well as your forum on your website, would be moderators. And a moderator's job is only to keep the peace. They are not there to be vindictive or wield a hammer. It's not a power play. They are literally people to help you find answers and point you to the right people and stop things when it gets argumentative. And it doesn't have, it's that simple. So usually what I would do in the past when I was looking for a moderator is I would see how they acted in the group and how they interacted with others, how they shared their stories, how they answered questions, and you could just get a feel for the person. You're like, that's a really good person to be a moderator. But someone that's like really angry and vindictive and keeps complaining about their tank all the time and talks about how their stupid fish are dying or whatever, that's not a good person for a moderator, because they're not level-headed. They're not calm and collective. They're going to be quick to get offended when someone says the wrong thing to them. Where a moderator, I mean, number one, they're trying to keep the peace, but of course, because they intervene, they get attacked, and they may get some vicious messages sent to them privately, or they may be cussed out, or called be called names, And it's just it's a thing. It's actually kind of a beating, but the benefit of the moderator is to keep the group flowing, to keep the conversation going, and to keep the peace. And without moderators, it's going to be the Wild West. It's going to be an area where, I mean, look at Club Miller's Reef, what we do here on Facebook. That group has 9,000 members, and there's 99.9% no drama. There is no trolling. There is no abusive stuff because we don't allow it. It's just that simple. And we've only had to ban like 2-3 people out of going on 4 years. We've had a few people just say, oh, I can't be in this group, and they left. Perfect. That's fine. If you don't want, if you need a group to be angry in, find a different one. But you want yours to be a spot where people can ask questions and get answers and not feel like they're being made fun of. And to have a club that is in your local area you can ask questions to is fantastic. To be able to have club members get together in gatherings, I mean, I know right now we're still on the edge of is gathering safe or not, and even that's debated. But our club had a club meeting 2 nights ago. And it was a small handful showed up, but it was also streamed to YouTube. So those that could not or did not want to leave their homes could just watch from the safety of their house. And it was a nice little group that we had. I got to walk around and look at the store. It was a Glass Aquatics. I had not been to the new version. I'd been to the old store a couple of times, but the new one is much larger, and there's some really nice setups in there. And I shared a few pictures in our group, on our Facebook club group. But I need to post it on DFW Mass on the club's website as well, because that's where it belongs. It's really important to gather your information and have it in an area where it can be referenced. Because, for example, if you have a Facebook group and someone posts a picture of an adaptation and says, what is this? 50 people will probably say, oh, and they basically are just implying you should have Googled this. And it's like, well, how do you Google something when you don't know what it is? I mean, not everyone knows to do with a Facebook image reverse image search. And there's not quite yet do we have the ability to just point our phone at something and say, take a picture of it, and it tells us that's a pine cone. I mean, we aren't there yet. It's getting there. I mean, I think Google is, the Pixel is doing that already. But for now, if you have a thread that's like common pests and it's pinned in your forum, in your group, where people can just reference that, it helps answer some questions immediately for people. And having that kind of documentation forever on your website is really good. And if you have blogs, and if you have articles, and if you have top 10 best fish to have in your aquarium, top 10 pests to watch out for as permanent parts of the website, that will get indexed by Google and other search engines. And then when people type it in, it'll lead traffic straight to your club's website. So there's a huge benefit, because it's not going to lead them to your Facebook group. And the stuff that you post in a Facebook group, you see it now and it's gone tomorrow. It may regurgitate again in 6 months, or someone might bring it back to life briefly, but it just disappears. And if you've ever posted something and tried to find that post a day or 2 or 3 days later, it's not a simple thing, and it's not just easily accessible. So if you have things that you share in a forum on your club's website, it's kind of there forever when you think about it. And if the website is set up correctly and the forum is built correctly, it can actually be indexable by the search engines. And so then if let's say you rebuilt a skimmer and you did something really creative with, let's say you had an older skimmer and the pump that was on it no longer exists, and you literally 3D printed a solution and you made it work and you shared this DIY project with the world, well, you shared it with your little tiny club. But if the club's website is set up properly, the search index will hit Google, and somebody types in, ancient skimmer, broken pump, a little bit more specific. I'm trying to think of a brand that no longer exists. You think I'd have 50 in my head, but they type that, and then boom, there's a link to the thread on your club's site, and it brings attention to XYZ Club. So I see that's some benefits to having that. So it's really good to have a properly set up website. And again, the website is forever. It will cost you money. The club is not free. There's nothing free about anything on this planet. And there are different venues of doing things that will cost more or less money. There may be a monthly fee for a website. There may be an annual fee for a website. The software you're using may cost you something annually. And you're going to need someone to maintain it. You're going to need someone that's going to apply updates and patches, just like my own Milo's Reef website has to go through every single year. We have to update all kinds of stuff, and I have to pay too much money. Sorry, Jose. And I have to pay some money to get things, to make sure it's all safe and secure so it can't get hacked or shut down or overwhelmed, because those things do happen on this planet. Now, fortunately, clubs are not like a huge target of something to go after, but it is something that's very valuable. And once you've created all these different things, you're going to need a set of rules. And the rules are important for the club too, because it is going to set the tone and the guidelines for how you want everything to run. And you're going to need to create some kind of leadership. Somebody has to take control. Now, my friend Matt Peterson, who is a co-editor of Coral Magazine, he has, I think he's still the club president up there in, I always want to say Minnesota. Michigan, Minnesota, I don't know. He's up there. And they always talk about his, how does he term, beneficial, no, I think it's beneficial dictator. Something along those lines. Basically, he's saying this is how it's going to be. And he has just run the club that way, and it just stops a lot of the arguing. All right, hang on just one sec. So setting up a set of rules or guidelines could be how often there'll be club meetings. I mean, they're not, rules are not always like this horrible thing. Sometimes they're really good things. But if you create a set of rules that people know what to follow, they can then understand how things are supposed to be run. And it also can kind of rule out some of the issues that arise, because you can just say, hey, the rules say we do this, the rules say you can't do that. And I do recommend it. In Club Milo's Reef, my Facebook group, I created a video, and it's about 5 minutes long, and I don't know how many rules are in it, but there's quite a few. Thank you very much, Jason. He said Duluth, Minnesota. So Minnesota was right. All right. The rules should be posted on the website. The rules can be posted in your Facebook group. It's very important to remind people to review the rules. And it's a really great way when you're moderating, because you can just say, please refer to the rules, and you close the thread. And that way they can just say, oh, okay, yeah. And like I said, the biggest thing you're going to have, I've always hated this. I mean, I am well known for this. I hate the for sale area, and I've ignored it forever. And I rarely ever post something in the for sale area. I just hoard it. I just keep stuff forever. But occasionally I'll put something up for sale, and people want to haggle. And that's fine. If you want to haggle, that's fine. I'm just not a part of that. But I would look at the forums that we had on DFW Mass, and we'd have photography, we'd have reef discussion, we'd have the open discussion, which was anything under the sun. We had chemistry, and we had club events, and then we had for sale, and it'd be dry goods, live goods, and those areas there always had conflict, and they always had posts, and yet no one was posting about their aquariums in reef discussion, or they weren't sharing pictures in reef photography. I'm like, why are you only living in the for sale area? And I think people wanted to basically subscribe to that SIG, that one segment of the website, so that they could go ahead and get the latest deal on anything, and they could keep snapping up all kinds of great deals. And okay, I understand, and it's nice to save money, and it's nice to be able to buy things. But if you have that kind of environment happening on your Facebook group, I'm afraid that the algorithms and the automation will just shut down your group. So I'm saying get that over onto your club's website as quickly as you can and point people to it. And if people want to sell an entire used setup because they're getting out of the hobby, they can post it on your club's website so your club members can see if they can score a deal. I mean, there is a benefit to having that, okay? I'm just not a fan of it. And like I said, there was so much conflict and controversy and arguing and debate and the moderator spent so much time trying to keep the peace in the for sale forum that I kept saying, just get rid of for sale. Let's start posting about our tanks. Let's start telling stories. Let's show some of our DIY projects. Let's show some really pretty pictures. You know, let's get back to the hobby itself, because this hobby is not about buying and selling all the time. Matter of fact, I'm helping someone in New Jersey right now. We talk on the phone every single week, and this week he asked me a question. He says, "What happens when everything's fine with your tank? And, you know, when everything's right and the corals are happy?" I was like, "You get to enjoy it," because he has spent the last few weeks trying to solve issues, and we've worked together on that. But he was at the point now where he thought, well, nothing's wrong, so what am I supposed to be doing? I'm like, nothing. You get to enjoy it. You get to have a good week, 1 week of pleasure and 1 week of success, and just enjoy it, but be vigilant. Still stay on top of things. Still keep testing your water and, you know, cleaning your glass and looking at things. But if everything is doing well, fantastic. That's not the time to go spend money and buy more stuff. That's not the time to start ripping things out of your tank because it's going well. That's the time to take a break and take a breather and appreciate it for what it is, because at some point in the near future, something's going to mess up or break or shut off or lose its programming, and then you have to go through the steps of resolving that issue. So the same thing as me, as I'm telling, how did I get to this point? I just feel like we should be sharing when things are going well, and we should be also appreciating our tank for what we have, rather than worrying about what's the next thing we're going to buy, or what's the next thing I need to obtain, or what's the next thing I'm going to set up. Because I think then our tanks get lost. We lose connectivity with the tank because we're so focused on the next thing. And we're not stopping to just inhale and enjoy what you have in front of you now and to appreciate it. And, you know, even last night as I'm studying a couple of corals saying they don't look right, I'm looking at all the other corals saying, but they all do. And that's an important thing that we want to do. And in a club, you could be teaching that to other hobbyists that are so excited and so frenetic in getting things done and in such a hurry. You know, the ones that want to go through the cycle super fast, the ones that want to add a whole bunch of livestock, the ones that want to run the lights longer, and they want to do this and they want to do that. And you're like, hey, just let nature start to, you know, follow its own pace, because that's really how reef tanks work. And so having that mentoring program on your club's website would be really, really good to help others to be more successful, to answer those questions that they don't know the answers to yet. So if you're an experienced hobbyist, great. If you're an inexperienced hobbyist and you're creating a club, that's okay too. If you are a new guy and there's no club in your area and you're creating a club and you're starting to get people in, you may end up bringing in people that have been in the hobby a long time that were just never a member of a club, and they could actually be the ones that you're getting advice from right through your club's website or your club's Facebook group. So you see, there's some benefits there of having such a thing set up. Now, what I didn't mention was planning events. And events are, I think, probably the lifeblood of most clubs besides the for sale area. Planning events these days is a little more challenging because of COVID, but as you can see every day, more and more people are doing more and more things and kind of going back to what they are used to doing. Some have lived their lives as if COVID had never happened. Others are living like COVID will kill everyone. So there is a whole, you know, dynamic there that you have to navigate. And I would just say that if you want to plan an event, you can say we're going to do this at this place. We are doing our best to maintain distance between people, or we are doing it outdoors. We recommend wearing masks, or we recommend, you know, whatever. You literally create the rules for what you expect to happen at your event because you're planning it. And when you plan it, you want to have a place that is comfortable for all, that's temperature controlled. If it's, I mean, human beings need temperature control too. You know, if you're just having a gathering of people, one of the simplest ways to have a club meeting is in someone's home. And I remember when we would fill up one person's bedroom with like 14, 15, living room, sorry. They would fill up one person's living room with like 14, 15 people, and we would hear something about the latest product, or we would hear something with the latest article, and then we would possibly have some kind of a raffle. There would be some little things to snack on, some drinks. And then, you could have some quiet time to interact with others around you, to make new friends, and to kind of find out who lives closest to you in case you need some help with your tank someday. And that was it. And then the club meeting was over. It doesn't have to be a crazy, overblown production, but there's nothing wrong with a nice, polished meeting. It's nice to have organization. And I remember one of the things that when we would do like a board of directors meeting, and the board of directors are the leadership of a club. That's usually how they're set up. And I remember when we had some meetings, and we're just talking about fish stuff, okay? And I'm not trying to overly simplify this or in some way be denigrating, but when we were trying to just have a conversation about the next event, or how we're going to do the next election, or how we were going to organize the next frag swap, and then someone would chime in, "You're not following Robert's Rule of Orders," or Robert's Rules of Order. I'm just like, oh. I mean, it defeated me immediately, because it like killed the conversation in the room, because someone's saying now we have to follow some guidelines from this book that, I don't know, unions use, or some, I don't know who uses it. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to be denigrating. I'm just like, sometimes I just want to have a meeting of heads to discuss something thoroughly and then move on. And sometimes those profiles that are used, where kind of reminds me a little bit of politics, where you have 2 minutes to state your case, you have 30 seconds to rebut it, anyone else have something to say, let's take a vote. I don't know, it just seems so procedural and kind of I think it squashes conversation. I think it squashes ingenuity. And I think that's one of the reasons I liked the forum that we had, because we would have a board of directors forum where the board of directors could talk to themselves without the view of the entire club. And we could discuss and hash out ideas of what we wanted to do way before we could present to the club, this is what we're going to do. And that way things came across much more organized and, like I said, more polished. And so if you can have an area that's for members only, people that paid to join the club, if you have an area for the leadership only, and even an area for the moderators only is really important, because if you have 5 moderators, for example, handling all the conversations on the club's website, someone may post something and a moderator says, I don't really know how to handle this one. They can bring the post into there and ask other moderators, do you see a problem? And if they say, nope, looks fine, it's like, okay, cool. And we all just go on with our lives. But if they say, oh, yeah, I'm glad you saw that, let's handle it this way or that way. And it may be that we need to ask the original poster to edit what they wrote. Or we may have to actually remove the post. Or we may have to delete a part of the post. It just depends on what the moderator tools are that are available to you. Sometimes it's very simple and it goes really well. And sometimes it's a little more heated. And that's why it's so important to be able to have this area for moderators to talk to each other, make sure everyone's on the same page. So you don't have one moderator saying, yes, you can do it, and another moderator saying, no, you cannot. That causes huge conflict in a club. You need everyone to be on the same page and understand this is what we all agree on. So I would recommend the moderators very much so, and documentation as much as you can, talking about your tank as often as you can. I mean, these are all good things. And there are actually habits I've gotten out of. I used to live on forums. I did it for so long, and it's where my name got established, because I literally lived on Reef Central for something like 7 years, 8 years, and I posted daily. I was like the 3rd most prolific poster on that website when I got banned. And when they threw me out, I was like, okay. And then at that point, I didn't want to join a new forum because I was kind of done. I'd done it for 8 years. I was ready to do something new, and I created a new website called Reef Addicts, and I still own it. And I did that one with blogs instead of forums. And the benefit of blogs is you could write a huge, long, whatever, as long as you wanted, with as many pictures as you wanted, and then you hit submit, and all of what you had to say shows up in one article. And then people could comment underneath, but they didn't interrupt what you were talking about. And I always thought that was really important. And people did not understand the blog process back then in 2010. They were just like, I really like forums. Like, I don't care. This is my website. I'm doing blogs. And we had a lot of blogs in there. Personally, I had 1,500 blogs on there. And that was my way of communicating with the world. And it was a great way for me to document my tank. And I really need to figure out some way to import all those 1,500 blogs. And Ed, I'm talking to you. I need to import those somehow into Milo's Reef. I would like to get all the documentation into my official website that I use for my business, because all of that information is valid. And if something were to go wrong with that website, I would hate to lose it. Speaking of which, I mentioned before, you need to have someone to maintain it. You need someone to back it up. It's very important to always back up your club's website so it doesn't get lost. Because if something goes wrong, or if someone does something vindictively, you want to have something you can bring back to life. And that's very important and cannot be overstated. If you are not running backups of your stuff, if you're, I mean, just like we back up our phone to our computer, or to the iCloud, or whatever Android people do, we all back up. If you're not backing up something as important as your club and your club's database, big mistake. Also, something else that you need to do, at some point your club is going to grow bigger, but before it gets to that point, something I would urge you to do from the very beginning would be to start an email list and start gathering emails with names, numbers, addresses, that kind of stuff, and just create that so that way, if for some reason everything goes wrong, you have one last way to reach out to the membership. And you can use MailChimp, which is a really good email newsletter system. And I believe it's free if you're emailing people under a certain number. So I can't remember what the number was, but maybe it's 50 people, maybe it's 150 people, whatever. But I know at some point you have to pay a small fee monthly, maybe to send out like 1,000. DFW Mass sends out 11,000 emails once a month. So there will be some kind of a fee that you do have to pay, but that is going to be your life's blood to communicate directly to the members of your club to keep them apprised of what's going on. And it's really important that you have that information. And again, that should be backed up as well. So MailChimp will actually store the email, the first name, last name. It won't save like personal addresses or anything like that. But if you have a person that you've assigned to membership for your club, that person could have a spreadsheet that has, name, phone number, address. That's really all you need. And then maybe a username if you're using nicknames on your club's forum. And that way you can look things up. You can figure out where events should happen, because you can kind of bring, I remember somebody did this one time, long time ago, and I wish we did it again. But they got all the addresses from the database for the club, and then they stuck it into something that was Google Maps related, and it put dots all over the Metroplex, and we could see where the concentrations of club members were to figure out where the best place was to have an event like a frag swap. And instead of just saying, hey, we found a place here, and everyone's like, oh my God, that's so far from me, you could literally make sure it's within relative distance of everyone. So to have the ability to pull up that information and have it saved is important. And I think one of the big concerns people usually have is like, well, I don't want my information sold. Like, well, why would a club ever sell membership information? Ever. There's no reason to do it. So that should be one of your rules. We will never sell your personal information. I don't recommend that clubs hang on to any kind of credit card information. Just because they're paying to be a member does not mean you need to have any kind of credit card information whatsoever. And if you're using something like PayPal to accept membership, they will handle the transaction. It's completely secure. And you can even set up a subscription system to where it just automatically renews once a year. And that way you don't have to remember, because for the longest time, we'd have to send out email or actual physical letters to people to remind them it's time to renew your membership. And it was quite a lot of work for the membership person, which for a couple of years was me. So if you can set up a system from the beginning where you're doing membership. And why do you need money? Because you need to pay for the website. You have to pay for MailChimp. You have to pay to rent a place to do a frag swap. You have to pay to rent a place to have a meeting if you're going to have a nice meeting with chairs and tables. Or what if you want to do a demonstration where you're showing how to do something, how to, I don't know, a photography demonstration, a fragging demonstration, a acrylic building demonstration, a plumbing demonstration, an electrical demonstration, a Apex programming demonstration. Anytime you want to do those kind of things, you need a room where people can be with you. It's well lit, it's air conditioned or heated depending on the time of year, and it's going to cost you some money. It's very rare you can find a place for free. You need a place where everyone can go in, park. You would hopefully be allowed to bring in some kind of refreshments and snacks. So it would be important to be able to do all that, and even the refreshments and snacks. If you want to have a club meeting and you just want to buy a couple of 12 packs or 24 packs of sodas and some pretzels and some cookies, you're going to need $50. Where does that money come from? Club membership. That's why you want people to join the club and chip in a little bit. And I mean, it's not like they have to pay a lot. Our club that's been around 30 years charges $25 a year. It's not that much. Not that much at all. Cheaper than most frags. And that's a once a year payment. You know, it's not a lot of money. And it allows the members the ability to, well, we've changed the rule recently, but it was specifically like once you had paid to be a member, then you could sell things on the club's website. That was a rule we did for a long time. We just recently changed that to now you don't have to be a paid member to sell. So, but that's again, in your rules, you decide what's best for you. And that's kind of it. Now, finally, the one thing that you may want to consider as your club becomes more solidified, you may decide, you know what, we need to make this thing official. And by official, you may decide you want to apply to be a nonprofit club where you're a 501c3. You'll need, I don't know, a CPA, an accountant, an attorney, something like that to help you get through that. Someone in your club might be one of those that can help make it happen. And then once you apply for it and you get approved for it, being a 501c3 nonprofit means you can receive donations from companies, and those companies can write off that donation as a advertising expense, basically. I think I have that correct. And then there's another one, which DFW Mass is, which is 501c7, which isn't nonprofit, it's not for profit. And not for profit's different. And companies do not benefit at all donating to a not-for-profit. So that is just, there is a difference between those two. So you have to decide what is best for you. And also, if you are going to companies asking for something, be prepared for them to say no. And if they say yes, be reasonable. You know, matter of fact, I remember in the past when I was seeking out some items, I reached out to a company and they suggested a certain number. I said, no, it's way too much. Can you just give us this? And, you know, there's no reason to hit them up hard because you want to be able to go back to them again one day. It's not a one and done. So if you are asking for donations and contributions to give away as raffle prizes at club meetings, you want to be able to get something from Reef Nutrition and something from, I don't know, BRS and something from Me Loves Reef and something from, I mean, there's, you know, all these different companies out there. And those things, those potential prizes are also a really nice encouragement for people to come to the club meeting. So you would like to have some things that you can give to people if at all possible. Another thing you can do to help get more goodies for the club's vault would be like if you go to an event like Aquashella or Macna or Reefapalooza or something, and if there's any kind of like giveaways and you kind of get some things, you can bring those back. Instead of keeping them for yourself, they are going to go to the goodie table at the club meeting, and they just scatter it on the table, and people can go get stickers, or they can get, you know, koozies, or maybe there's a t-shirt that fits them or whatever. Just having some little items there. It's just a nice little something to take home with you when you leave the meeting. So those are some of the things that I would suggest. The events themselves, you want to organize them really, really well. You want to know where you're going to be, how many people you anticipate are going to show up, which is really hard to guess. How many tables you're going to need, how many seats you're going to need, how much electricity you're going to need. Is there any kind of connectivity for possibly streaming it? Or do you want to record it and then upload it to YouTube later? Do you need a screen with a projector? Do you need microphones? Do you need recorders to capture everything? You know, these are all the things you have to decide. And none of these have to happen from the very first meeting. But they are things that as you expand and grow, you will find is becomes more and more complicated. You're hauling more and more stuff to the meetings if you're on the board of directors. I remember one person would have a carload of the AV system, and then another guy had all the refreshments, and another guy had all of this. And membership had to show up with all their things and be able to like give out their membership cards or be able to look up their names on a computer. So they had to bring their laptop every single time. So there's all these different little logistical things that you want to keep in mind so you can look things up. Another thing you have to have is a potential, and this is a tricky one. You have to have a bank account for the money. And you should have a treasurer for the club, because as people are giving money to the club, the money then transfers from whoever's transferring. So let's say it's PayPal. You transfer from PayPal into the bank account. Who's in charge of the bank account? Who is going to be held accountable for the bank account? So typically the president of the club would be one name on that account, and the treasurer would be the other name, possibly the secretary. I mean, because if one person can't do it, the other person has to be able to. So that means there may be 1, 2, possibly 3 debit cards out there. And as money is being used, like to get refreshments or to buy a raffle prize from a local fish store, you're going to have to account for that money being spent. Someone has to track it and keep that organized. And if someone came to the meeting and said, look, I just want to pay now while I'm here. Here's my $20 or my whatever you're charging. Here's my $25. And they handed you cash. Someone has to then take the cash to the bank and deposit it, because that is club money. It's not my money, and that's an important thing to keep in mind too. So, and then once a year, you're going to want to explain where all the money's going. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it shouldn't make you nervous at all. And because you're just being honest, you're being upfront, you're being transparent. And if the club brought in $5,000 this year, and your 2 events this year cost you $500 each, that's $4,000 left. And your website costs you, like $100 a month. It's 12 months. It's $1,200, and you bought $50 refreshments for club meetings, and you flew in a speaker, and that cost you some money. I mean, you can just show where all the money went, and you can say, and we still have $1,896 to start our new year, and you build on that. So that's all of it. And then of course, there's going to be someone has to file a tax return with the government to show where the money went and how much money is in the bank. Because if you don't do that, they're going to come looking for you. I think I kind of covered it all. Thanks, Ed. One other thing that when you want to do the 501c3, you have to have bylaws at that point, because now you're becoming incorporated. And the bylaws are not the rules. The rules are like the rules of the forum. The bylaws are the bylaws of the club. And usually the bylaws are going to be generic statements, like the purpose of the club is to encourage sustainability of the livestock that we care for. It would not be... I'm trying to think of something logical, and my brain, of course, goes off in these crazy ideas like, we don't allow women in our club. I mean, that's my ridiculous, stupid statement. But like, you would not have that in bylaws. That is not your bylaws. Your bylaws are going to just be, what's the purpose of the club? What are you trying to accomplish? And they're legally binding. So, I mean, it's important that they're correct. And one of the best ways to write bylaws, if you don't know anything about them at all, is to look at the bylaws of some clubs that already exist. And you can just kind of look at this like, oh, I get it. Okay, it's pretty boilerplate. And you don't want to make it super specific. You don't want to be crazy vague, but you don't want to be so specific you paint yourself into a corner. Like, the bylaws state we will have 12 meetings a year, and then you find you cannot do it. And you're like, no, you're in, what is that? Your failure to adhere to the bylaws. That would be a problem. But if your bylaws said we will have an annual board of directors meeting once a year, that's important. And you should definitely have your board of directors get together and have a 1-hour session where they talk about how the club is doing and what the club could do for the next year. And so that's kind of the things that go in the bylaws. And I know ours are super long, and I believe the person that helped organize the first version of them basically went out to like 9 or 12 clubs, looked at all their bylaws and found all the parts they liked and made us our own. And then later on, the board of directors had to go over it and review it and kind of update it and make it more. And at this point with COVID, it'd almost be good to look at them one more time, see if there's anything that needs to be amended on there to make sure that we are still staying nice and organized, because conditions are so difficult these days compared to where they were 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we just lived our lives and had a good old time and got together. Now, if you're looking for places to have club meetings and you're not sure where to do it, if you have a good relationship with a fish store, that's a great place. Because if you say, look, I'd like to have a club meeting in your store one night, and I know you close at 7. Could we have our club meeting here at 7 and go from like 7 to 8 or 7 to 8:30? And they may say yes. And then I know a fish store doesn't always have a lot of room, but in a way that's kind of good. Not good for COVID. Sorry, my brain has to realize we're in a different world now. But it was a smaller combined area where everyone's together. But you're surrounded by aquariums, and so you see all this stuff. It makes conversation so easy because you've got, if you're bringing your children with you, they get all excited by the little critters in the tanks, right? And you see a fish you like, someone's looking over your shoulder saying, "I would never buy that," and you have these nice conversations. Plus, the store might want to do some kind of demonstration. They may want to talk to you about their quarantine system, or they may want to talk to you about a new product that's coming to market that they have got the prototype of. I mean, there's things that can happen in a fish store. The downside of being in a fish store is that it's a little noisy, and sometimes it's hard to hear what the presenter's saying. I remember, we'd have huge amounts of people show up at our fish store meetings back in the day. Like 60, 80 people came in, and the place was just packed with people, and everyone's walking around with a cooler. And I remember this one store owner, he was excited that we were coming in because he's seeing everyone walk through the door. They have a wallet in their pocket. They have a wallet in their purse. They're going to spend some money. I mean, there's an opportunity to sell to 80 people that weren't there all day long or all this week, And so that's really nice. But I remember this one store owner was thinking, or he was actually nervous because he saw everyone walking in with a cooler. And he says, "What's with all these coolers?" And he wasn't worried about alcohol or something like that. I think, legitimately, he was concerned some of his things were going to be pilfered, taken out of a tank, put in a cooler, and they just walk out the door without paying for it. And I understood that concern. And, we explained to him, they're bringing coolers because we're trading corals, or we want to buy corals and bring them home temperature controlled. But someone needs to keep an eye on things too, to make sure no one's doing anything to ruin your relationship with that fish store. So if you have club members, one of your rules would be you be on your best behavior, keep your children near you. If your child is being noisy, to pull them aside, and that way people can hear the presentation, that kind of stuff. But we want to make sure that you don't leave a bad taste in the fish store owner's mouth, because they'll never let you come back. And stores talk to other stores. And if you end up with a bad reputation and the word gets out to different stores, you may have lost the opportunity to meet in lots of places. So think of it as an opportunity to build a good relationship between the club and the fish store. And this is a really tricky dynamic. Man, I've been talking for a long time, but there's so much to cover. The reason this is so tricky is you would like to be able to put a flyer or business cards in the fish stores to promote your club, because anyone that walks in that buys a fish or a coral, they have to go to the register. And if they're at the register and they're like, "Hey, here's a club about XYZ club. I didn't know there was a club in the area." You don't want the fish store owner to say, "Oh yeah, you don't want anything to do with those people." You definitely don't want that. You also, what you'd love them to do is say, "Hey, yeah, you should join the local club. It's a bunch of great people. And if there's ever an emergency in the middle of the night at 2 a.m, you can ask for help because someone's going to be awake." That's what it should be in a perfect world. But the tricky part I was trying to explain to you was, number one, if you left a bad taste because of the way someone in your group acted at the last event in their store, and what's going on with the selling forum on your club's website. Because as things are being bought and sold for cheap, it's actually limiting what the store can make. And the store is there to make money. They've got to make money to keep the lights on and keep the electricity on and keep the livestock alive and pay the employees and pay the insurance and and order more livestock and all the things. And if they feel like your for sale form for the club is detrimental to their business, it will create negativity. It'll create a problem between you and the store. Now, we're lucky where I am to where we have so many stores that even if some stores felt that way, the other stores did not. And so we were okay. And as far as I know at this point, I don't think any of the stores in our huge area of Dallas-Fort Worth has any problem with the club. I don't think we have any. In the past, there have been a few that just straight out disliked us. There were some that hated me, the person. They just couldn't stand me at all. One guy I totally offended, and I was trying to joke. And boy, at that time, I was not the club president. And the president of the club called me up and says, "Mark, what did you do?" And I was like, "Nothing." And he was like, "That guy is furious with you. He told you never come back." And I was like, "That's fine." It was just, I was joking. But yeah, I blew it. I messed up. Sometimes I'm going to say the wrong thing. Do you want to know the story? Do you guys care? I mean, I'll tell it to you if you want. But that was a long time ago. So anyway, we want to make sure that you have good relationship with the fish stores as much as possible. It's going to be tricky. It's not impossible. So if you can navigate that, you're doing a really good job. And if you can, I mean, like there was a club in Pennsylvania I visited, and I think they had a downstairs. Like you went into the store and you went down the stairs and there was a meeting room down there. And the club met there. I thought, man, this is brilliant. Because you can come here and then you can walk back upstairs and you can buy test kits, fish food, livestock, and head out the door, and you're not interfering with the business because they had that meeting room. And I was like, I love that. And I wish we could do that. So I would say that that's a... if you can find a store that has that kind of space, that'd be fantastic. Okay, one person asked for the story. Good. So I was told to go pick up the sponsorship for that store, which means they would give us a small check for the year to promote their business, their store, on our club's website. And so I had to go find this place. And this was not in the days of smartphones. This was in the days where you had to have a Mapsco or a map in your car, and you had to find the address, and you had to navigate. And I'm trying to find this stupid store. And when I finally get to this area, it's not like the front of 7-Eleven, which is all glass, which you'd expect, or like a strip mall. It was an industrial building or set of buildings where they have the roll tops that come down that I guess a truck could back up to. And I'm driving through here trying to find Suite 107 or whatever, right? And I'm going up and down, zigzagging. I'm getting more and more irritated. But that's not really what happened. But it's just one of those things to kind of set the stage. So I finally, and this is a new sponsor for the club. This is a new store that we're going to be telling our club members about so they can go check out, right? And so I finally get to the place, and the roll top door is down, and there's one glass door. And when you open the door, it was maybe 12 feet to the counter where they had little tiny register like you buy at Costco, those little tiny plastic ones. And there was a row of tanks on my left. There was one of those Rubbermaid carts that you would put some fish bags in to roll it forward a few feet. And then there was a few tanks over here. I mean, it was so small. It was basically a closet. And at the time, I was a huge fan of Seinfeld. I watched it every single day, and he was a very funny guy. And so I'm in there, and because the rolling cart is in the way, I couldn't even get around it. I mean, it was so narrow, so tight. And by the way, this one side on my left was all freshwater. You already see where this is going, right? And then you got the saltwater on this side, which was a few tanks. And then you could see behind that counter, there was like a door with a window, and there was like this huge warehouse where they did whatever they did. I think what they really had was an aquarium maintenance business, and now they decided to put a storefront in the front of the building where they keep all the equipment they use to call themselves an actual fish store. But it was this tiny little thing, and I just said to him, man, this place is so small, I need to go outside to change my mind. Which is a line from Seinfeld. He got so mad at me. He's like, how dare you? And he was like, I'm just here to get the check. And he was furious with me. And I'm like, he wasted all that limited space with freshwater, and we're supposed to have people come here. We could never have a meeting in this place because there's no room at all. Oh my God. I was just like, I wasn't turned on, and he was furious with me, and the club president had to fix what damage I had caused with one tiny little joke. But Yeah. Anyway, that place didn't last long. I'm sure it wasn't my fault it didn't last long. But, and if he's a viewer now, I am sorry I offended you. Like I said, I was quoting a Seinfeld joke because it felt appropriate, and I did not know I'd make you so mad. So, and if you're not watching this, that's okay. So much the better. But at the time, it was a thing, and you know, you do have to realize anytime you're out and about, if you're representing a club, you have to act a certain way. And you know, what did I learn from that? Don't go offending fish store owners after that. And I did learn my lesson. I didn't go out there and do that. I had to make sure I was in a good relationship with whoever if I was going to joke around at that point, because it's just so easy to offend people. But yeah, so that was the story of that one. All right. Let's see. Ed's pointed out, did I mention that the club should join MASNA? No, I did not. MASNA is the Marine Aquarium Society of North America, and it is a organization that helps people start up new clubs. They actually have a section on their website with directions of what you can do to start up a new club. They also have a program called MASNA Speaks. And if you're a paid member, and I believe the club membership for MASNA is $50 a year. So again, membership dues, $50 needs to go to MASNA. And supporting MASNA and providing them some funds allows them to help with some of the legal stuff that goes on. They can help you getting yourself organized to create a club to make it a 501c3. And the MASNA Speaks program is actually a program designed to help save money to fly in a speaker. And I think if, like, let's say they were flying in Sanjay Yoshi from Pennsylvania to your club in Denver, and you're a new club in Denver. And if you're a MASNA member, your club is, then all he has to do is have a slide at the beginning of his presentation that promotes MASNA, and at the end also, I think you bookend it, one at the beginning, one at the end. And that just meant that MASNA helped sponsor that speaker, and they will give something like $300 toward the expense of flying in the speaker, which is nice. I don't know if MASNA Speaks is doing any kind of, I was trying to think of the word, it doesn't really matter. I don't know if they're doing anything for virtual speakers. Like if you get a speaker and they're willing to just do it from the comfort of their home, where they're wearing the dress shirt and the tie and the pajama pants. I don't know if they give you $50 toward that or something so you can pay the speaker. I have no idea. But I do know MASNA Speaks has been around for many years, probably a decade. And it was something like $250 or $300 to help, which helped either cover the cost of the flight, or it helped cover the cost of the hotel, or it helped cover the cost of the venue. It helped. Because when you fly in a speaker, you've got to take care of the speaker the whole time they're in town. You can't just fly them in and they give a talk. It's not quite that simple. They will arrive early in the day. They're going to want someone to pick them up at the airport, get their luggage, check them in at their hotel, take them to 2 or 3 fish stores, take them to get a meal, bring them to the meeting. After the meeting's over, take them to dinner possibly, or to a place to decompress, and then get them back to the hotel and back to the airport, unless their hotel is at the airport where they can take a shuttle. So that expenditure right there easily could come up to about $1,000. So having membership dues helps to accomplish the ability to bring in a speaker once or twice or 5 times a year, whatever it is you choose that you like to do. Bring in a lot of speakers, and it was a lot of fun. And things have changed so much. So you don't have to do it as much. And you don't have to do it like every other club did it either. You can kind of do it. I'm going to include a link in this video's description at the end of an article about DFW Mass. It was published a long time ago in reefkeeping.com, which is an online magazine. And that one kind of gives you a really good oversight of a lot of the stuff that I've chatted about in this live stream today. So I think I shall stop there. And let's start answering some questions. So if you would be so kind as to put @MilesReef in front of your question, then I will be able to find it and I will be able to answer it. I'm going to do a quick search for Miles Reef. One of the first questions that was asked was, do you have any experience taking care of a tamarin wrasse? No, I have not kept that one at all. I haven't even looked into that one, so I cannot help you with that at all. Adam says, I'm excited about the topic. I'm in the suburbs just north of New York City. There are no active reef clubs here. There's a town in North New York State called Rochester. That's the town. And there's a club there, for example. I don't know how close that is to you, but there is an active club inside New York itself. There is a New Jersey Reefers as well. So, I mean, there are some, but I don't know who you're closest to or not closest to. But you can definitely do a search and see what you can find. If there's nothing, Adam, you could be the first one to start something over there. Dave says, are there any new products or equipment or new livestock that you've added to the tank? Well, the newest thing I added to the tank equipment-wise was the Siche pump, which I'm using as a return pump to the temporary anemone cube that is in the fish room, which is behind me. I also am lighting it with a Kessel light that I've never used for my aquarium. So there is some equipment there, but it's really temporary for now. I'm not sure what I'll do with the Siche pump after this. It's just, it's the latest. And then other than that, no. I've been discussing getting critters for the tank. I've been discussing getting fish. I think what I'd like to do possibly next is find a small yellow chorus wrasse. I like to get little tiny ones if possible. And I would like to get a couple of pipefish. I think those would be cool. I've been watching the new urchins I got. I don't know if you knew about those, Dave, but I got 11 tiny urchins, and they're already bigger. I'm kind of waiting because I was told that 2 months they'll be full size. And so what I want to do, I'm going to check the date when I put them in. And when it's 2 months, I'm going to take one out and put it in my palm and take a comparison picture of the first picture where I had 2 of them in my palm where they're like little grapes, so we can see how much larger they've gotten. But the red stuff on top of the surface of much of the rock work, a lot of it's been chewed off, which is great. It looks a little bit better already. Alex says, is dosing trace elements necessary if I do a 10% water change every week, assuming that my salt mix is good? Trace elements are in the salt mix. You could add trace elements yourself. And it could be what my tank is lacking right now. Like it's lacking something that makes a couple of the corals just not look quite right to me, while all the rest of them look completely fine. It's one of those things where it's kind of hard because we can't test for trace elements specifically other than an ICP test. So if you did buy a bottle of something that literally is called trace elements right on the bottle, and there are a lot of brands out there. There's Continuum, there's Kent, there's Brightwell, and that's just a few off the top of my head. I know ESV has some. ESV has the trace elements built into their AB or their 1,2 or whatever they use for their demarcation for alkaline and calcium additive. And when you would use, the stuff I'm talking about is B-ionic. When you used ESV's B-ionic, you were putting in alkaline and calcium and 80 trace elements every single day. And that was why my tank looked so good back in the day, my little 29 gallon, because that's the only thing I used to dose. And I had to pour it in every single day by hand. So is there enough in your salt mix? Yeah, but okay, let's just take your number, 10%. You've got a tank, you take out 10% of the water, you put in 10% new water, you've put in 10% trace element. I don't know, is that enough? See, that's why it's kind of hard for me to answer you on that one. But I know some have a weekly regime where they actually pour in trace element. And that is something that you're going to have to determine. We just don't want to put in too much of something to where it causes negativity, which is why we do the ICP test. And by the way, if you guys aren't aware, I do sell ICP analysis test kits, or not sample kits on my website, where you put in 2 water samples. You could put in your salt mix and your reef tank. You could put an RODI and reef tank, and you can send it off, and in a week you get an answer. And it tells you how your tank's doing. And if you want to be like me and you want to send off test kits, I sell them on the website. Problem Prone, great nickname, says, I have a few fish showing ick. I did quarantine them prior, but all the fish are acting fine. Do I destroy my tank to remove them, or do I try UV and just accept I'm going to have ick in the tank? If you keep the fish in there, you're going to always have some kind of ick in the tank, yes. The UV could help to alleviate at least the free swimming trophonts that are in the water column. But, you know, the statement, do I destroy my tank, is a little bit overreach. You're not going to destroy it. But to catch the fish out, you may need to make some changes. One of the preferred methods of getting fish out of a tank, if you can't just use a fish trap and catch them one by one and move them into another quarantine or into a hospital tank to treat them for ick, would be to drain out as much water as possible. All the fish would be in about this much of water, and you can scoop them out quickly and refill the tank. And that way the tank's only been out of water, missing water for 10, 15 minutes, and you refill, and any corals you have in there can handle that. I would just, you're probably not running metal halides because so few do these days, so I wouldn't worry about you cooking the corals. But if you have a light on top and you're thinking it's too much for the corals while the water is taken away, just move the light out of the way or push it back or elevate it higher so you can work in the tank. But yeah, if you could remove a lot of the water, they're not going to have the ability to run away from you as much. Some may tuck into the rock work. You may have to move 1 or 2 rocks in the process. There was someone that posted this, and I shared it on the Mila's Reef page on Facebook, where he had to catch a fish out of his tank, and he couldn't. He tried everything. And so he ended up getting this netting, the same stuff you guys use as screens on top of your tank, and he put the netting all over the entire reef to where the fish was in front of the netting. He just kept tucking it in there, and then once the netting covered everything in the tank, then he was able to catch the fish because it could not dart into the rockwork anymore. And I thought it was pretty brilliant. I had not seen anyone do that before. Great question. He says also, part 2, if I have ick in my tank and I decide to just control it, like live with it, do I even bother quarantining any new fish in the future? It kind of seems counterproductive, doesn't it? Because if you have a tank, we really don't want ick in our tank, right? And the best thing that you can do is eliminate it, to completely solve it so that it's not in the tank. There are some aquariums where some ick is present and some fish will show an infection while all the rest act completely fine, their immunity is great, and they don't have any kind of issue. However, when something goes wrong in the tank and something overdoses or underdoses that really throws off water parameters, that ick could show up on everything. And then you're dealing with way more than just trying to save a few fish, because now you're trying to save the whole reef from the overdose or underdose of whatever happened. Kalkwaser overdose, alkalinity overdose, some kind of phosphate control overdose, topping off with way too much top-off water that wrecked the salinity. These are all those, tank getting too hot, tank getting too cold. The things that really skew the numbers are when the fish that seemingly seemed okay suddenly could look really, really ill and need medical attention. And now you're trying to deal with the fish that are super sick, and you've got a reef you're trying to recover, and it's a whole battle of the wills at that point to see what all you can do. It's triage, and you're trying to save as much as you can and realize some things may not work out. So if you wanted to make your tank ick-free, you're going to want to get all the fish out of the tank into a hospital tank. You want to treat them for ick, however method you find the most acceptable to you. And you want to leave your tank fishless for a specific duration, which is kind of long. My brain, sorry, I'm not a fish disease guy, but my brain says the tank has to be fallow 6 weeks. That might be much longer now. I'm not positive that number, but 6 weeks seems to be what I recall. And Humble Fish is a website you can go to for all the fish disease questions. Bobby runs it and has a forum on there and can answer your questions and be probably the best. He's the person I would send you to. And if you don't know how to find Humble Fish, you type in Humble Fish in Google, or you type in your browser in the address bar, humble.fish, and hit enter, and they'll take you straight to his website. Do you think a virtual, this is Jesse's question, do you think a virtual club could be viable for those of us who live in the middle of nowhere? Yes, you can definitely do a virtual club, but it would be nice to have an annual gathering. You could actually make that the big deal about your club. Like, we just meet online and we use Zoom or however we're going to do it to where we can chat with each other, and we do it once a month. Or you might say, we want to do it every weekend. Or you might say, there's this one group, I'm in a group chat right now, that every single night they have a video meeting of just hanging out. And every single night I see the little invite. I'm like, wow, again, they're doing another one. And that's their thing. They literally like doing this every single day. But, if you want to have some kind of a gathering with some people online on a scheduled thing every single month, that's great. And then you could plan on, we're getting together for a barbecue. And it doesn't have to be aquarium related for the get together. I remember one time our club did an event where it was pumpkin carving. And we sent one person off to, I don't know how many stores to get an entire truck, a truckload of pumpkins. And then everyone got to carve their pumpkins, and the best pumpkin would win a cool prize. And then we also had some barbecue grilling going on nearby, and there was drinks, and the kids could run in the park because it was a park where we did this under a covered pavilion. And that was a fun event, and it really wasn't a fish event at all when you think about it. But it was the club members from the DFW Mass Club that went. And my pumpkin did not look that great. I made a clam, of course. Mahmoud says, I've heard you say multiple times that white light grows corals, but I've noticed that for the period of the day while that I have the whites on, I have zero alkalinity uptake. Is that normal? That's an interesting question. I don't know how you're measuring that so precisely. Are you running the Alcatronic to where it measures every single hour? I'm just curious how you're figuring that out. Because like with my Trident measures at midnight, at 6 a.m., at noon, and at 6 p.m., and I cannot move the clock. And so I really don't really pay attention to how much alkaline is being taken up during the day or night. I just look at the number just to see what it is day after day after day. But someone smarter than me would have to answer that question. I don't know. Nick says, is there any issue with collecting money without being a 501c3? No, there's not. The 501c3 is not required to be able to actually have club funds. If you and 5 people wanted to make your own bowling league, right? And you're like, we're going to be a team and we need to get shirts. And you said, hey, everyone chip in $20. And so now you have $100. And you go to a place and you get 5 matching shirts for that $100. You don't have to report anything to the government. See what I'm saying? It's the same thing. You are creating a little club, and at first your membership's gonna be small. You might have 10 people, you might have 20 people, you might have 40 people, possibly. And of the 40 people, maybe only 20 want to actually pay the dues, and the other half are just hanging around, but they have not officially joined the club. Still, it'd be good to have a bank account to put that money in so it's safe. And it's not. But I mean, some people might just have a zipper bag and they are trusting Brad to hold the money. And when they say, hey, Brad, we're going to need drinks for the next gathering, he's like, he looks through and goes, well, we've got $78. How much do you want me to spend? And then the board of directors, the leadership would say, well, let's just spend $35 on drinks. And he might just get a thing of water bottles and a thing of Oreos and say, that's our refreshments this week because we're kind of low, and if you'd like to join the club, we could use your money. I mean, that kind of thing. But no, you don't have to actually be a 501c3 to collect money to, you're grassroots at that point. You're just such a small club. But as it gets bigger, it needs to become a little bit more transparent to keep everyone from getting riled up. This one I have not heard anything about. Winterwater says, do you know anything about adding yeast to the tank for gorgonians? The appropriate dose and how to do it. Nope, that's news to me. I have not heard or seen or discussed that with anybody. So I'll have to see what you have found out. Maybe I'll find a thread now because you mentioned it. Maybe I'll get an ad on my Facebook about buying yeast. Bet Noir says, my larger existing clowns are homicidally hostile toward newer, smaller clown additions. Is there a workaround? Stop adding new clowns. If you have a pair in your tank right now, enjoy them for what they are and choose other fish. Clowns don't like other clowns inside their territory, and it really doesn't matter how big the ones that dominate will attack the smaller ones. So I don't recommend adding any others. Jace says, I just got a job in marketing at my local reef store. I want to start a sponsored reef club where people won't have to pay membership, but I'm worried about coming off as a shill. Any tips? Well, what is a sponsored reef club specifically? I remember there was a guy, and this may be similar to what you're describing. And being come off as a shill, I'll answer that too. There was a guy who reached out to a small group, including me, and said, hey, I want to set up a club. I'm not even going to say where it was because I don't know if this guy did it, and I don't want to get anyone upset. But he said, I want this to be an exclusive club, and the membership is going to be $100, $200, $500 a year. It's going to be a lot of money because I want it to be for us doctors. You know, I want it to be, I don't want riffraff. And he said specifically, these are people that are going to come into my home and see my tank, and I want to know they're okay. So basically he was saying if these people are elite and have a lot of money, I have more reason to trust them than someone that's poor. And I thought, man, that's kind of rude. I mean, it's all about the aquariums, really. But I was like, but if you want to do this and if people want to buy into it, you know, that's their choice. But I understood what he was coming from. He was just worried. I mean, I have let so many people into my home over the last 20 years to see my aquarium. And, you know, I mean, there is some risk in doing that. But I've had almost no bad experiences. There's been one or two that were not good, but the rest of the time, people have been very pleasant. They appreciated getting to see the tank. They were very excited. They got the one-on-one tour, and you know, sometimes they wanted to take a picture of the tank or take a picture with me or something like that, and that was fine. Or they were picking up product because they wanted to. I think one of the fun things that I get to do every week, which, you know, I wouldn't have thought about, but it's become very obvious, is when customers place orders on my website, which now I should put this on the screen, huh? When customers buy things from our website, some are local enough they can drive over and pick it up and not pay shipping. And others will buy things that require me to ask a question. And while I can email them, some people don't get back to me as quickly as I'd like them to. And so I may just call them up. And so I will call up, you know, so I called someone up yesterday and I said, hey, I've got a question for you about these baffles you ordered. And he was just like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, I'm calling you about your order. And I knew what he was saying wow about. He was like, he's talking to the guy that he watches on YouTube every week. And it's fun. You know, like I said, it's a nice thing. It happens to me every single week because someone during that week I have to call doesn't expect a phone call from me. And so they always get a kick out of it. And it makes me smile because I understand. I am running a business. I do have to actually interact with the customers. And I do need to, you know, sometimes find out what's going on or what you're trying to do so I can make sure to put the right thing in the box so that when you receive it, you're happy. And I do like talking with you guys. I am kind of a loner. I mean, literally, I live alone with a dog. And I have my reef tank. But I do get to interact with you guys on YouTube every week. And I get to interact with people on Facebook and Instagram every single day. So there's that. But I work from home, and I live here, and I cook, and I do laundry, and I mop floors, and I do everything myself. Jack doesn't even help. And I have to do all this stuff. And then I have to occasionally, you know, make a phone call and call a customer. And so, yeah, sometimes people get to talk to someone. You know, I'm YouTube famous. That's all it is. You know, that's what I like to joke about. Now, about the shill part, that's a hard one. I was accused of being a shill by one of those stores. Remember I told you a couple of the stores didn't like me at all? There was a guy way up in the north part of Dallas, and I kept hearing bad things about him, but I'd never met him. And then one day, I made the huge long trip. I mean, it was the middle of nowhere for me. For me, it was a long drive, hour and a half each way. And I got there, and he was busy talking to customers or doing something, and he saw me, and clearly he knew who I was. And I just kind of waited, and I looked at test kits on the wall, and I looked at this, and I looked at livestock, you know, I was just looking at things. And then finally, he had time to talk to me. And basically, he just kind of chewed me out for about 40 minutes about the club. And I just let him say everything he had to say. I mean, it just went on and on and on and on and on. And then finally I was like, okay, are you done? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay. And then I said, you know, thanks for letting me know your concerns, that kind of thing. And then I asked if I could get a certain test kit, which he didn't have in stock. I had some store credit that I got as a raffle prize at one of the meetings that had been in my glove box for a long time. And I used it to buy some peppermint shrimp, and I left. And that was it. And I decided I'm never going back. I just didn't have a good experience with him. Like I said, I didn't go all the way across town to be yelled at. And but then I found out through others in the club that anytime someone came into the store, he would complain about the club to them. So it wasn't just me. That was his thing, complain about DFW Mass. And he would do that. And then he'd complain about me to those listening ears and say how I would force every single member of DFW Mass to buy a sump from me. And that's why he doesn't like me, because I am forcing members to buy my sumps, which is ridiculous. Our club had 600 members. I had not built 600 sumps. I did not force club members to buy sumps at all. There was some that bought my sumps, and there's some that bought my frag tanks, and others bought some top-off containers, or they bought an RO system, or whatever. But I am so aware of my business in interacting with DFW Mass that I err on the side of caution always. I very, very, very rarely promote my business on the club's website. And a lot of times they'd say, hey, what about you, Mark? Don't you want a table for your... I was like, oh, yeah. You know, do we have one left? I'm like, yeah. Like, okay. But I would not promote my business to the club because I always was worried how it would be taken, or the impression it would leave. Am I shilling? Am I trying to constantly just trying to get the business, because I felt like this is the club I'm a member of, I'm a moderator of, I'm now on the board of directors of, and I don't want people to say that I'm getting special treatment. And I remember at one point, I did a whole bunch of, I did a lot for the club for a super long time. And we had a president at one point tell me, he said, Mark, you really should have negotiated for, a lifetime sponsorship back when you did such and such. And I was like, what? And he said, you could have been given the sponsorship for free for the rest of your life, for the rest of this club and for what all you did. And you didn't do that. I'm like, never even thought of it. And he was like, well, that's your mistake. You should have done that. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was it. And so instead I would just, donate $200, $250 a year in product to the club that would give me an opportunity to promote my business that I barely used, along with all the other businesses that promoted their business on DFW Mass. So I've always been super cautious about not being a shill. And I remember when I was on Reef Central, I was running a website and I was documenting everything on my website. And then I also sold on one page of my site RODI systems. And that was pretty much it. And then eventually I started selling acrylic products, right? And yet, because I would point someone to my website to solve your problem for cyanobacteria, or to identify a amphipod, or to how to take good pictures of your reef tank, Reef Central said, well, you're basically a shill. I'm like, how am I a shill? They said, well, you sell things on your website. I said, yeah, if you were on my website and you read the article and then clicked shop and then went to RODI, eventually you'd find a product, but it's not like my traffic from an article takes me to a sale at all. And they were like, well, that's the problem. I was like, okay. And so they said, so you can't link to your website anymore, which is annoying because the whole point of the website was to be educational. Now in the last, pretty much the last 10 years, my website has changed a lot. The documentation's still there. The articles are there. The blogs are there. The photos are there. But a lot more effort has been put into the shop area because it's literally what I do for a living. It's the only way for me to pay the bills. And so I do have that on the front page now, and there's whatever there is, 200 items that I sell from the website at this time, and I do the best I can to keep you, all you customers happy. But I don't proactively, constantly push things for sale because I hate advertising. Myself, I hate advertising. I hate advertising, period. And I fast forward through commercials all the time, and I don't look at billboards, and I scroll past ads on my phone, and I don't want to be sucked into stuff. And so I assume if I hate it, everyone else hates it, and why would I want to put out my ads to irritate the people around me? And which is kind of backwards, because any business out there is promoting their product to make money. and I need to find a common ground in that topic, and it's really hard for me because I'm just not wired that way. I'm wired the exact opposite. And the funny thing is, the irony is, my father ran a very successful advertising company for decades, and all he did, I mean, that's how he got himself a fantastic home on a castle, a castle on a mountain, basically. And, I'm here in Fort Worth. But, yeah, so, I am going to be promoting things I sell from my shop more, especially once the new building is up, because I want to get those things off the shelves and into your hands. But it's an internal battle for me. It's always hard for me. So anyway, the best way to avoid being a shill, the long answer to your little tiny question is be balanced. Talk about everything and mention the thing you sell from time to time. Talk about, how this will solve a problem. You may even solve a problem that doesn't mean they have to buy something to fix it. You might save them money this time because this will fix it, and they'll remember that. And then they may even be more prone to buy something from you later because you saved them money the first time. So, I mean, there's that. But yeah, if you're worried you're going to be a shill, then look at how you say things and how you present things to avoid that. And I mean, that's the best advice I can give you. I don't know. I don't know. It's the best I can say. Problem Prone says, part 3 to the question, what type of setup do I need to make it handle the buy load of 13 fish? Well, what size are these fish? If you've got a bunch of little tiny fish, like 13 tiny clowns, it's going to be one small tank. If you've got 4 tangs and a couple of dwarf angels in this, you're going to need a much bigger tank to hold them temporarily. You may be able to rent a tank from your fish store, maybe one that they broke down that's for sale used, and you could use it for 2 or 3 months while you're dealing with a sick situation. Then you could, like I said, lease it or rent it and then return it to them, or help them sell it when you're done using it. Or maybe just buy the used tank and that is your deal, and then when you're done, put it up for sale anyway, so it's not taking up space in your home. But yeah, I can't really answer you on what size because I have no idea what fish you're dealing with. Sharks 3D Man says, for hand dosing alkalinity, magnesium, and calcium, what brand would you recommend? My reef has gotten to the point where water changes don't do enough. It's a 145-gallon tank with a 35-gallon sump. Let's just say for funsies, your total water volume, everything is about 140 gallons. And that's probably pretty close to accurate. Even though you have a sump, the tank itself has less water in it than the described size. I really liked Be Ionic, the stuff I mentioned earlier, but you can also use the 3 parts I sell from Frank's Tanks, which is the DIY alkalinity mix, calcium mix, and magnesium mix. And you can mix those up in gallon jugs because each one makes a gallon. And then you can dose from that manually with your hands. Or you may decide I'd much rather automate this a little bit and use Kimura pumps. And see, I'm selling now. I sell the Kimura pumps. I have them in stock on my shelf. So if you would like to do that, if you are hand dose, I mean, listen, really what I would like to see you do, if you want to get the 3 parts and you want to mix it up yourself, like literally take powder, add RODI water, stir it into a solution till it's crystal clear, now it's ready to use, that is going to be your cheapest option. If you don't want to mix it yourself, you can buy bottles of A, B, and C, or alkaline, magnesium, calcium, and those cost more, but they're done. You just have to shake the bottle because it's been sitting on a shelf for a while, and then you would pour it into the little graduated cup and you pour it in. And hand dosing is actually really, really smart when you're learning what your tank needs and you're testing your tank frequently to learn what it needs. And once you've determined, okay, I've figured it out, I always need 35 milliliters of alkalinity, I need 25 milliliters of calcium, I need 40 milliliters of magnesium, I think I'm ready for a dosing pump. You'll know what to program into the dosing pump. You can say those 3 numbers in the 3 pumps, and then each pump will dose that amount once a day, or it can dose a little bit in the morning, and then an hour later a little bit more, and an hour later a little bit more to do the day's dose of alkalinity. The second pump would then dose in maybe one shot or maybe a little bit over 4 hours. And then the third one could just run and just dump in all the magnesium at once. That's fine. So there are people that will set up really complicated dosing schedules where whatever the day's amount is, let's just say it was 24 milliliters because it's easier that way. And they say, I dose 1 milliliter every hour, 24 hours a day. I'm like, why? Why would you do that to that poor little pump? It's just, you could put in 6, 6, 6, 6 and be done. You could put in 2 12s and be done. You could put in 24. It'd be all right. As long as it's going to an area of high flow, it'll mix in properly. And a dosing pump doesn't just go doof. It trickles in anyway. So it's trickling in and mixing in with the water column, and it goes into the tank. But yes, hand dosing at first for the first few weeks to dial it in, to figure out the exact amount you need to put in each day would be really wise. And you follow up with regular water testing, probably test every other day for those couple of weeks, just to make sure you're not overdosing or underdosing. And then when you finally have determined what that number is that seems to work day after day, and the numbers just stay so nice and stable, then get dosing pumps to put that in for you so you can actually take a weekend to go see family or go on a vacation or, I don't know, do whatever it is you want to do where you don't have to actually be there that day to pour it in and be trapped, stuck at the house. Nick says, any advice on feeding a Valentini puffer in our stocked 180-gallon reef? I'm concerned about competition for food meant for the puffer. And then please, a shout out to my fiance, Megan. Hi, Megan. Congratulations on being a fiance. I heard Nick's a really great guy. You can feed fish from a feeding stick, and you could literally put the food right in front of the puffer or teach the puffer to come to that stick. And that way, as the other fish try and steal, you are still making sure that that one puffer is getting a meal. And I think that's pretty much the best approach. Now, a feeding stick or a pair of what look like really long tweezers is another method of doing it. And that is one approach that tends to work. If you're ever worried about a fish not getting enough food, you could squirt the food, if it's smaller foods, like meaty foods you thawed out, such as Rod's food, you can squirt it in multiple places in the tank. It's 180 gallon. You got 6 feet of water to play with. You can put food here, 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 and here. And that way the fish rush over here, and then there's some food here, and some rush over here, and maybe the Valentini will just go over there and get a bite. So, that would be kind of the couple of approaches to spread the food out, to feed multiple times a day, small amounts, or to use a feeding stick to get the food to the fish in question. Winterwater says, I'd love to buy a sump from you. No, you have to be a member of DFW Mass to get one of my sumps. But yes, shipping to Romania would be crazy expensive. All right, that was all the questions directed to me specifically. Let me see if there was anything else in the chat that I didn't see. Let's see. Oh, thank you. So Jay said, I want to set up a normal Reef Club without membership fees because the store I'm working for is sponsoring. Okay, so the store is paying for everything. Yeah, well, so how do you know they're a member? What would designate them a member of this fish store club? There's nothing wrong with the store being the club. Milo's Reef is a store, and I have a group of 9,000 members called Club Milo's Reef, and it's not just my customers. I'd love to say that's my 9,000 customers, but that is not my customers. But some are customers, a lot of them came from YouTube, some came from Facebook, some came from Instagram, some just found me through Facebook, just accidentally, like, oh, I did a Google for reef tanks, and it showed me this club. So, you have this wide variety of people, but what designates them a member? How do they become a member of this fish store club? If it's not dues, how do they represent themselves? Do they have a card they put in their wallet? Is there for example, some fish stores in the past, and some still do it, they'd have a card and they'd punch a hole every time you bought something or you spent so much money. It's like if you spent $50, they punch your card, or maybe it was 25. And when you finally got 8 or 10 punches, then you got some money off your purchase, or maybe you got a package of fish food for free or something. So it was a loyalty system, loyalty card. But yeah, if the club is running and the store is sponsoring all the events, they're paying for the speakers to come in, they're doing everything. That sounds more like membership to the fish store to me, if that makes sense. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Let's see. Okay, I think we're just going to end it here. We're at 1 hour and 50 minutes. There's 119 of you, I think, because this was not the most interesting topic in the world. We didn't have as big an audience today as usual, but that's okay. We are going to have one more live stream next week. That will be the last one of the month. And then we will not have one on the 5th, which is March 5th, because I will be gone on my trip. So I would just like to encourage you to remember today is Water Test Saturday. Caitlin always said water tests save lives, and we definitely care about the lives of what's in our aquariums. So we test. And we test alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, nitrate, phosphate, salinity, temperature, potassium, and whatever else you want to test. The more you want to test, the better. But we definitely want to test, and we want to know what's going on. I have tested all my water this week. I know where everything is. I'm not concerned about my numbers. But like I said, I have a few corals that are acting a little iffy, so I'm choosing to pay for an extra test next week to send off the ICP sample. And I'm just going to see if anything comes up in there that makes sense, that explains why things aren't quite as perfect as I'd like them to be. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great weekend. And if your weather is cold where you are, I hope you're staying warm.